So today, we're going to be talking about perseverance and resilience and just a bunch of stuff today. And really allowing yourself to stand in your power to continue to show up. And this thing came up, and I'm going to talk about it on the podcast too, but it came up for a number of reasons. One, because y'all know last week was a crazy week for me and for Jerry, right? Trying to get stuff done. And we just made some serious lemonade out of those lemons we got last week and made some stuff happen, because that's what you do, right? When you are committed to your purpose, you find a way to make things happen. And so all of that stuff happened. And then over the weekend, had some issues with some things happening, both professional and some personal things happening, trying to get stuff done and things breaking and last minute, not just stuff that makes me crazy. And I listened to an interview. If you haven't listened to Sam Sanders' show on NPR, it's a really great show. I listened to Sam Sanders, and he was interviewing Wajahat Ali. And I hope I pronounced that correct. He's got a memoir out called Go Back to Where You Came From. He is a U.S. born, California born, right, of immigrant parents. He's Pakistani. And he said a couple of things. And so this interview, along with the fact that it's Black History Month and really thinking about people like John Lewis, like Harriet Tubman, like, all of the folks that we have seen who have persevered, Stacey Abrams, in some really crazy circumstances. The one thing about, months, it's like we can focus on things for 1 month, but Black history is history. So I think we should be talking about it all the time. It's just an opportunity to highlight some things. But the thing that hit me with all of the battles that we are fighting and continuing to fight decades later over stuff that we thought was solved is perseverance. Perseverance is that ability to keep going despite obstacles or failures or difficulty. Perseverance. And so that came into my mind, and then hearing this interview, because y'all know those God winks come to me, and that's where I get stuck, because all these things kind of come together, and I'm like, that's what I'm supposed to be talking about. And what he said was, he was at UC Berkeley when 9/11 happened. And his roommate woke him up, and he's like, man, I just want to go back to sleep. I think he said he was playing some kind of game, and he'd been up all night playing some kind of video game. And his roommate came and woke him up, and he was like, I'm going back to sleep. And then he woke him up again and said, you've really got to see this. And it was when the planes were hitting the towers. And here's what he said. And I had never heard anybody call it this, but anybody who's a person of color or an underrepresented group does this. And I was like, wow, this is it. And he said, as I watched this happening, I said the minority prayer. And when he said minority prayer, I was like, I know what he's getting ready to say. He said, I said the minority prayer. Please don't let them bleed. Please don't let them be Middle Eastern, right? Or please don't let them be Pakistani. And we do that too. Oh, please don't let them be Black. Every time something happens that's catastrophic, that is national, oh, please don't let them be Black. And he said the reason for him, right, his perspective, was the reason is because while if somebody does something that's that bad and they happen to be white, the whole entire white population isn't condemned. But if the person happens to be a person of color, the entire population is condemned for that one person. And the other example he gave was, that the first person that was hurt after 9/11, 3,000 people died. The first person that was held, quote unquote, accountable, a white supremacist killed a Sikh man in Mesa, Arizona. Now, none of the people that were on the plane that executed this tragedy, this atrocity, were Sikh. But this person saw someone, brown skin, with a beard, wearing a turban. It's your fault, right? So he talked about that, which is one of the reasons for the minority prayer. But the other thing he talked about was how he all of a sudden became the face of Islam, right? The face of Muslim people. He was giving speeches. He was, everybody was coming to him asking questions. And so all of a sudden he was thrust into the forefront of this thing and having to be the authority, right, on a whole culture. And so all of this got me to thinking about this whole perseverance and resilience thing. There are so many times when people, especially people of color, we have to speak for everybody else. We have to become an authority on everybody else. And as I say all the time, everybody doesn't speak for me. Just because they look like me, that doesn't mean they speak for me. And doesn't mean I speak for them. Not everybody believes. Not everybody who looks like me believes the same way as Candace Owens. Not everybody who looks like me believes the same way as Clarence Thomas. Not everybody that looks like me believes the same way as an Al Sharpton or a Jesse Jackson or an insert black person here, right? Not every woman believes the same thing. Not every person of Middle Eastern descent believes the same thing. Not every of anything believes the same thing all the time. It's just not true. But somehow we begin to lump people together because that's easier for our brains to process. And that's where racism comes from. And as Mr. Ali said, you know, racism is ignorant. Racism is ignorant. And it's violent and it's ignorant, right? They just lump folks together all the time. And yet, we persevere. We persevere. We find a way to keep making it. And so if you think about that just from a social perspective, right, there's all this stuff that's going on from a societal perspective that we got to think about. But translate that into leadership. Translate that into your organization, right? Whether that is your work or another organization that you're a part of or a nonprofit or whatever, a committee that you're on. Translate that whole idea of otherness or responsibility or perseverance into that role that you're in. Especially if you are in a situation where there is a complete disconnect of values, where they're not living up to what they say they are. This really happens in large organizations, right? That say they value people and they want to give back and they want to encourage innovation and they want you to be creative and they want you to speak up and speak truth to power. And then the minute you call out something that is unaligned, you're not getting projects. You're getting poor performance reviews. You get all this stuff happens when you all of a sudden speak up. Right? So then you have to make a decision about how you are going to operate in that environment. How are you going to continue to show up as you and do the exceptional work you've been doing when the environment is now telling you that all the stuff that made you say, I want to be here and I want to work here is not true? Because remember, people will listen to what you say. They will believe what you do. And if what you do says, we don't want you to be innovative, we don't want you to be creative, we don't want you to speak truth to power, we don't want you to call us out when our actions don't align with our words, we don't want you to do any of that, then what do? How do you persevere in that environment? How do you stay strong? And more importantly, how do you stay connected enough to yourself, aware enough that you can make a conscious decision when enough is enough, when it's a complete disconnect that cannot be tolerated any longer, right? When you have to make a move. Because I don't want you to hurt you because you're mad at them. Just because they're crazy, don't do something that's going to impact you negatively, right? Now, if you're in danger, you need to get out, right? Or you need to remove yourself from that committee or that club or that whatever, right? You need to just decide, yeah, this isn't working for me anymore, and just don't do that. Kindly, respectfully, but just say, I'm just going to move on. And that's okay, right? If you're in danger and it's really that disconnected, do that. But if it's not all the way there, then how do you persevere through that environment? One of the first things you do is you really start listening actively. And remember that listening actively means not only listening with your ears, but it's full body listening, right? You're watching what people are doing. You're watching body language. You're watching action. You're listening to what people say and you're listening to what they don't say. That's the first thing you need to do. You need to really listen, because you also need to discern, are you really seeing a disconnect or is that emotional for you? You got to start with home first, right? Am I just upset about this? Am I just overly emotional about this? And I don't mean, because women, we can be emotional about things. And that's not what I mean. I mean, can you look to home and be really honest with yourself about what you're seeing? Is this really what I'm seeing, or is this something that's just a hot button for me and so I'm responding? So if it's really what you're seeing is true, right, then start listening. Start really listening. What am I hearing? Am I hearing other people that are seeing and feeling the same thing? Is there a different advocate? Is there a supporter? Is there a different pathway to try to make a change, right? Listen actively. Listen actively. Am I hearing what I'm hearing? Is the story that I'm telling myself true? That's the first thing. The second thing is, then once you get the answer to that, if what I'm hearing is true, what, if any, impact do I believe I can make? So this thing happened. This thing is true. It's not okay. What can I do about it? What can I do about it? Right? And the second question kind of has two parts. What can I do about it? And do I care enough to do anything about it? Right? Because you also got to have a vested interest in wanting to make a change or wanting to make an impact. Because you're going to need that. Perseverance takes some energy. Because remember, it is about continuing to move forward despite obstacles, difficulties, right? And failures. That's what perseverance is. So if you know the thing is true, then what can I do? And do I have the energy or desire to do it? Do I care? And when I ask that question, that two-part question number two, about the things that I can do, are those really reasonable, right? I have to really go to home. What are the things I can do? What's in my skill set? What is this knowledge that I'm seeing? What are my connections that I can begin to influence? Because as a leader, and depending on where you are in the organization, you may not have, as they say, you may not have a stick to beat people with and beat them into submission. You may only have the tool of influence. And if your only tool is influence, how do you go be an influencer to other people who have greater influence and or a stick? Right? What action can I take depending on where I am in the organization and what my tools are and what my strengths are and what my skills are? And part of that action may be getting more information. Remember, I said that the key about listening actively, especially if with someone you disagree with, if nothing else, you know your opinion is not going to be swayed, but you may be able to strengthen your argument because now you know what theirs is. Now you know what their points are, so you can beef up your counterpoints because you've taken the time to listen actively and try to understand what's going on. Right? What can I do within my realm of understanding to make an impact? And then, do I care enough about it? Is it something that is important enough for me to use my energy? Because resources are limited. Time, money, energy. They are only so much. Now, energy can be renewable. You can go home and get some sleep, right? But time is not renewable. Time is not renewable. So is this thing that's going on that is clearly not working for me? If I care about it, do I care about it enough to expend my non-renewable resource of time? Right? So first, you got to really listen actively. Second, you got to decide, is there something I can do? And then, do I want to? Right? And then the third thing is, you've really got to take the time to understand and evaluate the impacts of whatever action you take so you can make a definitive decision about your next action. This is not a time to not be paying attention. Perseverance requires attention. Perseverance requires you to set aside emotion as much as possible to objectively evaluate actions and outcomes. Here's what I heard. Here's what I did. Here's what happened. Am I okay with that or not? So what do I do to change it or fix it or do something different? Because to persevere means you're staying in the game. You're staying in the game. What's important also in that question number 3, or that statement number 3, which is going to do the postmortem, what happened? Did it work the way I wanted it to work? Is, what did it do to me? This is a time to be putting your mask on first. This is a time to be understanding what this thing is and how this thing impacts you. Because at the end of the day, you still want to be able to show up as you in all of your superpowers, all of who you are, good, bad, ugly, crazy, insane, whatever, right? You want to still be able to lead the way you know you can lead with your gifts. So how is this thing impacting your ability to do that? Because if it gets to the point that it is so significantly impacting your ability to lead the way you know you're supposed to step into your purpose, to be who you are, to authentically make an impact, then it's time to make a decision about whether or not you need to make a change, right? It's not the knee jerk anymore. You've done the work. You've listened actively. You've decided what action you can take. You've decided that you care enough to take action. And then you've evaluated the response to the action that you take. And so you've gotten all of those 3 little points, right? All of those data points. So now you can decide, you know what? Yeah, it's time to do something different. Or they did take me seriously. They really did mean what they said they meant, what they said. Their actions are showing me that if nothing else, they are at least trying, and I am willing to continue to expend my non-renewable resource of time and my renewable but precious resource of energy to continue to work on this thing, to continue to show up, to continue to support the folks who are looking to me as a leader, the people who are looking at my influence, the people I'm influencing, right? But you have taken the time, you have paused and taken the time to be able to do that evaluation on those points to determine what makes sense for you. And to understand the situation more clearly. Because especially if we've said one thing, and if you're like me and you're just a mover, we have a conversation, we get everything on the table, we make a decision. Well, I'm moving because see, I've got stuff to do. I'm busy. So I don't have time to rewrite history every single time. Why are we having the same conversation 2 weeks from now when we made a decision already? Oh. That is one of the things for me. I know me. I may not know much, but I know me. And I am willing to spend whatever time it takes to come to a decision. And even if it's quick, I have a really clear ability to say, you know what? We are having to make a decision fast. We're just going to give ourselves the opportunity to move quick and approximate, but have feedback loops so we know when we need to make adjustments, because we don't have time to be slow and deliberate, right? We don't have time to be slow and precise. We got to be quick and approximate. We got to move. So I know me well enough to know we're going to have good conversations before we make a decision. But once we make it, I'm moving. Come on. I'm moving. And so if you're not, and you're still trying to decide, then we got a problem. Because see, then we're going to have a conversation about you're saying something different than what we decided upon. And so my perseverance is, okay, let me make sure that's true. I'm going to take y'all through this process, right? Here's what I saw. We had a meeting. We made a decision. We had plans. I started moving. And then somebody decided they weren't quite there yet and stirred it all up. Is that what I really saw? Am I just being emotional? So I did that evaluation. No, I saw what I saw. Okay. Can I take action? I absolutely can take action. I'm going to go back to the person and say, look, this is a decision we made. This was the agreement we had. What happened? Is that because I'm going to go in with an open mind with my help me understand. I'm not going to go in and say, have you lost your mind? I'm going to go in and say, help me understand, because this was the agreement, but something else happened. So is there other information that we didn't get? Is something, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to decide if I care enough, because see, for me, I'm usually deciding if I'm caring before I even talk to you and take action. And so if I've cared enough to then take action, we're going to have that conversation. We're going to make any kind of changes potentially that we need. And then I'm going to evaluate and say, okay, so that was time number 1. First time, shame on you. Second time, shame on me. So, things happen. It happens. Happens again. Then my evaluation is, you know what? Now I can't trust you. Now I can't trust you, because when we have an agreement and we're moving, what that does is it puts me in a situation not only to have to do work over, but having to have conversations and justification and redoing stuff and trying to Me remain in integrity, which means I am not going to be disrespectful of you. I'm not going to go out and say, well, we did this and they did, because it's not about they and them. It is about what we're trying to accomplish. But now you showed me, you've done it twice. So it's no longer about perseverance. If I'm seeing that we can have a conversation and I see changed behavior, I can continue to persevere, because life is not easy. Difficulties, failures, obstacles, those things are going to happen. But I can persevere and move and be resilient through all of that stuff when I understand that we have an understanding. When there is trust. When there is a willingness to say, you know what, I totally screwed that up. I am so sorry. Here's what we're going to do different next time. Here's how we're going to move forward. I am so cool with that, because none of us is perfect. But if you show me that I can't trust you, then it's not about perseverance. That's about being honest with what is really good and what's really bad. What is really true and what's not. And a willingness to decide whether I'm just going to stay with this or not. That's not about perseverance, right? That's about making a decision to stay in an environment that you already know is not working. That is not aligned with your values. That's not aligned with the way you operate. So now you're making a definitive decision to stay in a situation that's not great on purpose, because you can't blame anybody but you. Now, because this is a space of no judgment, sometimes we got to stay where we are because that's what we got to do until we can make a plan. And there is no shame in that. Again, don't hurt you because you're mad at them. But also don't stay paralyzed when people show you what you're dealing with. As Maya Angelou said, people will reveal themselves to you early. Believe them the first time. Your apologies, you can keep your apologies. I need to see change behavior. I've said that to more people lately in customer service. I'm like, thank you so much for apologizing, but please don't apologize to me again, because your apology doesn't change the situation. What I need is a solution. A solution is the apology. That's an apology to me. Change behavior or a good solution. That's an apology. But just continuing to say, I'm sorry, right? Acknowledge in the beginning. That's great. I'm so sorry this happened. We're going to fix it. The fixing it, I don't need you to say I'm sorry again. I need you to fix it. I need you to fix it. And it's the same thing if you're trying to persevere in an organization that is going through massive change. And I think what's timely about this topic right now in particular is this is the third year of the pandemic, you guys. And to all of my HR peeps, we had a meeting yesterday or this last week. Oh, my days are running together. Last week with the HR leaders here in Houston. And I was telling them before we started, I'm like, there is not enough money in the world for me to sit in that seat again. And I meant it. And my heart is just pouring out for you guys, because it is so hard right now. What are we going to do? What are we not going to do? Masks, no masks. Vaccine, no vaccine. Testing, no test. What are you going to do? And add that on top of leaders having a hard time managing people who are remote. Leaders not wanting to manage people who are remote. Are we saying you can't do it? Are we saying you can't? Babysitting, playground manager. I mean, it is a hot mess right now for HR professionals, because everyone all of a sudden is now looking to HR to have all of the answers, not only the compliance piece, right? So you got to understand all the details so you can make compliance, but also just the regular human interaction piece. How are we taking care of people? What are we doing in our wellness programs? Because wellness with a big W, right? Mental, physical, emotional, financial, big W wellness. Not just the programs, the lose weight programs that everybody does, once a year or something, but big W. How are we paying attention to people's health? How are we then, again, walking the walk? Are we one of those companies that's putting screen trackers and keyboard trackers on all our people's equipment that's at home because they're working remote? We want to make sure they're actually working, because that's what we're paying them for. But is that who you want to be? Because if that's who you want to be, okay, and people just need to know that. But if your words and your values say something different and your actions are telling people you're going to be big brother, who's sitting in the middle of that? HR is sitting in the middle of that. Because many of the leaders don't want to have the conversation. Legal and IT don't necessarily want to own up to the fact that they're saying you should probably do it, right? The employees are really irritated. So who's in the middle? HR, you won the prize. You get to answer everybody's questions. You get to be the sounding board for everybody and the whipping boy, right? For everybody. And yet you persevere through difficult times, through obstacles, through failures. If you've got an HR person who is still showing up every day right now and who is being pleasant and who is getting stuff done, you need to thank them. You need to take them to lunch. You need to pay them, right? Because they are being blasted with stuff right now. And if they're still there for you and they're showing up, honor that. And HR people, great HR people, keep doing what you're doing. The iffy ones, this is not the time. This might be your perfect opportunity to find something else to do. Because there's lots of roles out there right now and you can do it remote. So those of you who really don't want to be doing this, find something else. This is a perfect time. No harm, no foul, right? Because this is a time when you absolutely have to have courage. You have to listen actively. You have to understand that it's mission first, people always. Got to make sure you're taking care of the business so that the business can take care of people, and got to make sure that the people are taken care of so the business can run, right? It's a cycle, and HR has to be in all parts of that cycle, because you can't have a business without people, and people can't have a job without a business, right? It's this symbiotic relationship. You got to have both. So HR people, you are like the epitome of perseverance right now, and attorneys, right? Employment attorneys. There's so much coming at everybody right now. The rules keep changing. All of this stuff keeps changing. And employees are in the catbird seat now, right? The demands that are being made and the decisions that are now having to be made about what's consistent, what is fair, although life is not fair. So I always hate it when people come to me, that's not fair. You know what? I can't talk about fair in the workplace because that's not what we're talking about here. How do we do equity? How do we do equality? How do we do how do we do all of this stuff right now? And yet we have to persevere. We have to find a way to be resilient and to push through these articles, because the beauty is on the other side. That story you'll be able to tell on the other side of that divestiture, on the other side of that project implementation, on the other side of that madness is going to be amazing. You are going to have an incredible story to tell. And more important, you're going to be able to show others that it could be done. You're going to be able to lift up others who are dealing with the same thing. And find your network, right? It is lonely at the top for executives. I would argue that it's even lonelier for HR people, because we know so much stuff. We know so many details that nobody else knows, and we can't tell anybody. We can't tell anybody, right? We've got to rely on our colleagues, and even the most senior have to be careful even with their colleagues who they're relying on, right? Because even within HR, you got to be careful about what you're spreading in HR, because your HR team, they're employees too. They're not just HR, they're employees too. And so especially senior executives, that knowing where you can go, that's why having those villages is so important. Those confidants, those supporters is so important in the realm of perseverance. Who is your village? Who do you have in your village? If you're in that role, in that company, in that job that is just weighing you down and you're just trying to push through, who is in your village that you can go to and say, okay, I need to ask myself these questions. Did I really hear? Here's what I heard. Does that make sense? Where can you pressure test what you think you heard? Who can you run your ideas by on what actions you can take? Who can you talk to about, okay, now here's what I'm feeling. Here's when I did this, here's what happened. That's not what I expected. Here's the adjustments I think I want to make. Who's in your village that you can use to help you get to where you want to be or to do what you want to do? Who is that? And I encourage you to find one. If you don't have one yet, build one, right? Those people that you can count on. And it's a relationship. It's a relationship. So they are a part of your village and you are a part of theirs. And so not only is it when you need help, but when they need help too, how can you support each other? Just like mentoring relationships. Mentoring relationships are two-way streets. Yes, you are being mentored by someone, but what can you give back to them? as their mentee? What can you do to support and serve them? It's a two-way street. How can you find people to help you persevere so you can help them do the same? Perseverance can feel lonely, right? You feel like you are trudging up the hill. Actually, my meditation this morning was talking about, trust me, I've laid the plan. You're seeing the mountains. You're seeing the mountains and can't figure out how you're going to ever get over that mountain. When I'm saying you probably are so far away from the mountain right now, you can't see that there's a path, or that I'm going to give you the tools you need to climb the mountain. Perseverance is about knowing yourself and trusting yourself well enough to be able to make it through the difficulties or make a definitive decision when it's time to do something different, right? Remember that mantra I gave you guys that I came up with my therapist. Trust yourself. In this moment, you are enough. In this moment, you have everything you need. It is taped to my computer screen. I look at it multiple times a day, especially when tech is not being my friend. Like yesterday, when I was recording an amazing interview with someone and lost power. Yeah, I was not happy about that, as you all saw in my post, right? Perseverance is about continuing to go through, but it is not about hurting yourself just to get somewhere. You got to be clear on what it is you want, but you also got to be respectful enough and caring enough about yourself to understand when perseverance crosses over into self-harm. And quick sidebar, and then we're also going to do a shout out. We'll take a quick break and do some shout outs, but quick sidebar, while we're talking about wellness and especially HR people and going into this third year of the pandemic, I think everyone saw that the young woman committed suicide yesterday. And this is happening all over the world all the time. It's happening all the time. Please, please, if you see something, say something. Call somebody. Ask them if they're okay. Your really strong friends who say nothing, who always have a smile on their face, ask them if they're okay. Make sure you have the hotline ready, right? Make sure you have, and actually they're calling it, they don't call it a hotline anymore. I think they're calling it a support line. There's a new word for it, kind of a safety net now. Make sure you have that for people, because the mental health challenges, the stress that people are under right now is real. Going into a third year, this is a tough haul, guys. So just a side note, just make sure you're taking care of you. Also make sure you're checking on your friends. Make sure you're checking on your friends. And today with this weather, make sure you're checking on your curly haired friends, because we are not okay. We are not okay. All right, let's do some shout outs. So I see my Odessa peeps on my StreamYard. And so those of you who are on my Facebook page that I can't see right now, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. What have we got coming in on the other side?
Oh, okay. We've got Kansas City.
Yay!
We got Dallas, Fort Worth, New York, St. Louis, New Orleans, San Antonio, Chicago, Indianapolis, Atlanta. You also have Finland, Brazil, the Philippines, France. You have Mexico, Puerto Rico, United Kingdom, and Germany.
I love it, y'all.
And of course, Houston is represented as well on Facebook.
Houston, y'all always come through, and I so appreciate it. Thank you guys from around the world, around the country, for tuning in. You have so many choices, and I am so appreciative that you choose to spend it with me. And I'm going to keep doing those weekly shout outs because I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Plus, it gives me a chance, as I said, to find new countries, new places, things I haven't thought of. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and I have to tell you guys a quick story. As you know, we've talked about, or I've talked about many times on the show, there's things that you do, and then there's things that you want to do to feed yourself. And I love to learn. And when I am grounded, I am continuing to learn. I am feeding myself, and that enables me to continue to serve you, right? Like listening to the podcasts and all this kind of stuff. That's what really feeds me. And this is actually, there's two stories. So one of the things that I've been saying is I have got to get off my rear end and get my French and my Spanish back, right? I studied French for years, all the way in from first grade, up through college. But I'm a Texan, right? Didn't really use French. But when I went to grad school, I finished my graduate degree in Spain. And so 3 of my 4 classes were in Spanish. So I had to learn Spanish really fast, right? Because I was getting this degree. And so having learned French really helped me with my Spanish. And then when I did my first trip to Paris, it was just a hot mess. I was part English, part Spanish. It was just, I was speaking all kinds of stuff. Whatever word came to mind, that's what I spoke. And I had an opportunity to work with a group last week that was just phenomenal. Phenomenal. I was able to do a workshop with them. They were so cool. And guess what? One of the individuals was from France and one of the individuals was from Mexico. And so there were a couple times we had to do some translation. I was like, see, Laurel, you have really, that's a God wink. Get moving on the languages because those are the 2, French and Spanish right now, right? Get moving on your languages because you could have delivered this in all 3 languages, right? Mm-hmm. So God wink. The other thing, when you think about some of that is I was in my therapy session, I was saying, man, I just finally gave myself a break and said, Laurel, you're going to start reading the books February 1, all these books you got, there's things you want to do. And, don't beat yourself up. You've had a lot this first month. So and I said, but then, oh my gosh, I just want to read. And she said, but Laurel, have you ever thought about it's the content that you want to absorb. The format of the content is inconsequential. She said, so maybe at this time, it's about audiobooks or podcasts as opposed to reading the physical book. Because I love physical books, right? I love libraries, just the act of having a physical book. She said, but maybe this is not the time. Because you can listen to an audiobook and do other things. You can listen to a podcast and do other things. It's not mutually exclusive. If you've got a hard book in your hand, you're pretty much on lockdown reading that. So giving yourself a perspective, right? I'm still getting the information. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. It just is in a different manner, a different mode than what my brain was saying was the only way to get the information. That's how we lock ourselves in. So think about that as you're trying to figure out what you're going to do the rest of the year. Is there a different mode that you can get that information? Which aligns with this whole idea of perseverance. Is there a different way that you can take action? Once you get feedback on the actions you took, what worked, what didn't work, how can you do something different? And even if that different thing doesn't work, or if you continue to see the same behavior, what decision do you need to make to take care of you so that you can serve and work and give and show up in a way that is authentic to you, that's real to you, so that you are using your gifts in order to deliver in a way you want to deliver. So you have to look to home. Don't be afraid to call your own self out. Don't be afraid to look at yourself first. Now, me, I have to watch that sometimes because I always go to home. I always go to home first, always. And women, we have a tendency to do that too. What did I do? Maybe it was me. And sometimes it is, right? We got to know us. Sometimes it is us, but it's not always. It's not always. We're not always the crazy one. We're not always the one that did something wrong. We're not. You've got to spend the time to know you, to do the work on you. And that is hard work. You got to spend the time working on you and doing you so that you understand you, strengths, weaknesses, good, bad, ugly, right? All of it. So that when you are doing this evaluation, when you're listening actively, when you're understanding the information that's coming in, you can truly make that definitive decision. Is it me or is it them? And if it's me, is it me based on something that I'm just not going to change? Or is it me based on something that's, yeah, I should probably work on that? And only you can answer that. I've said this before. I don't have a poker face and I'm not getting one. And I'm not spending the energy to work on it because I don't care enough about getting one. But I do care about how I show up and how I engage with people, which is why I am aware enough that I don't have a poker face. So I manage the words I say and how I say them. I'm very intentional most of the time. Every once in a while I'll get emotional and something will come out the way I didn't intend it to. But for the most part, I'm very intentional in what I say and how I say it. Because I know me. And so I don't necessarily want the look on my face to be reflected in the words that I say. I am able to manage that because I've done the work and I know me. And that also enables me to persevere in situations. In those situations where I'm like, why are we having the same conversation again? I don't lead with that, right? Because that immediately puts the other person on the defensive. What do you mean? Why are we having this conversation? I'm clear on what we're doing. Well, no, right? It takes it down a whole different track. So instead of saying, why are we doing this again? I say, let's revisit because my understanding was different. Here's what I documented, but that's not what happened. Was there additional information? What, almost leading questions to say, I'm going to give you a chance to tell me what really happened before I lose my mind, right? So perseverance requires us to know enough about ourselves so we can adjust our own behavior in the situation that is creating obstacles or difficulties or failures. Perseverance requires self-knowledge because you can only just push through and go with inertia for so long. That only lasts so long. At some point, you're going to have to stop and figure out what is happening and what am I doing to make it happen? And what can I do to make it stop? Or if it's what needs to happen, how can I do more of that and less of that? It takes self-awareness. Perseverance takes self-awareness. And it takes a willingness to work. And we are in a time, both professionally and personally and societally, I know that's not a word, y'all know how I'm about words, that is taking a lot of perseverance because we are seeing some things that we shouldn't be seeing again. But those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. And we are seeing history repeat itself. I love books. And there's been this book on the Holocaust that's been banned in some places. I have not read this book. It's a children's book. I've not read the book. It's been banned. It is now one of the top selling books. So now maybe it's a little shady on me, but I say ban it. Because the minute you ban something, that's when people start reading it. And I think it was Stephen King came out and said, and he had a posting that said, if you see someone who's telling you not to read something, that's the exact thing you need to read because there's something in there they don't want you to know. Mm-hmm. So ban it. Just don't burn it. Now, if you start burning stuff, we're going to have a problem. Ban it. Because see, I'll find it and I'll read it because it gives me additional information. I may not agree with it. And there may be some things in there that are offensive. But one of the things that we cannot continue to do is to support intellectual laziness and to keep people from being able to think and to function and to respond because we have limited their exposure to stuff. Mm-hmm. Life is not easy. It is not all rainbows and unicorns. It is going to beat you up. What is that? Wasn't that in The Hitman's Bodyguard? Life is going to bloody us up. It is. And the more you know, the more you are able to respond, the more you're able to discern, mm-hmm. the more experience you have to be able to make decisions. People make crazy decisions now because they haven't seen nothing. I tell all of my friends, kids who reach to me, I said, especially folks who grew up in Odessa, I'm like, get out of Odessa. If you don't do nothing else, get out of Odessa. Even if you go back, right? It was a great place to grow up. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was a great place to grow up. But get out, go see something else, and then come back. Because it is such a little microcosm of crazy and interesting ideas. You need to get out and have your perspective challenged in order for you to understand whether it's real or whether it's just something somebody told you. Because you're smarter than that. And you owe it to yourself to be able to make your own opinion based on a myriad of facts and a lot of information. You need to learn discernment. And the only way you do that is to get more information, to have more experiences, to see different things. Just like I told somebody the other day, as irritated as I was about this electricity issue, because it's bigger than just my lights going off. What I also recognized, having seen other things, is it is a first world problem. The fact that I expect to have electricity and for it to be working all the time is a first world problem. There are folks who don't have it. Mm-hmm. They don't have running water. They don't have a roof over their heads, right? Have you been to the favelas in Brazil? There are people who have so little. And I'm irritated because my lights aren't on. It's a first world problem. But I can only manage myself and have that intellectual humility because I've seen something else. And I've been challenged by other things. And I recognize that my life is my life, but it is not necessarily representative of anybody else's. And it doesn't make mine better or worse or fancier or more nothing. It just is. It's just mine. And it works for me. But it may not work for someone else. And so how can you really sit in that perseverance, right? Really push through. We call it, bootstrapping. Although I hate that because it has some other connotations around it. Because a lot of bootstrapping then comes with a lot of racism around it about, well, I don't know why they can't work. They should just I picked myself up. Well, yeah, when you have investors, you can do that. But that ability to persevere also can rely heavily on what you have seen and what you have experienced. Some of the people who have been through the worst things are the ones who have persevered the most, who have been through the worst traumas, who have seen some of the worst things. That's why I get so irritated when we throw around these words like fascism and Marxism and socialism, and we throw around all these words. Most of the people throwing them around have no idea what they mean, and most assuredly haven't necessarily experienced them, because they would realize that we already have programs that are that they are taking advantage of, right? That fall under one of those categories. But by having additional experiences and allowing yourself to see what other people do and how other people live and how they overcome and how they push through and how they persevere, it helps you understand where you are and how you can persevere and maybe sit in your own strength. That's why a village is so important. A village is critical to perseverance, because it's very hard to persevere alone. It is very, very difficult to persevere alone. And none of us, even those of us who feel like we have no one really gets through this world alone. There's always somebody. Somebody's always watching. Somebody's always giving or taking. Somebody's always doing something, right? None of us gets through this world alone. We are all somehow interconnected. But we can push through and we can persevere if we listen actively. We decide what action we want to take, or we can take based on our skills. We decide whether we care enough to take that action. And then we pay attention to the outcomes of the action we take so we can then adjust if necessary. That's what we do to be able to persevere. That's what it takes to persevere. And it takes having done the work on yourself and being honest with yourself. Because you can lie to a lot of people, but you can't lie to you. You can pretend. You can pretend, but deep down, you know you better than anybody. You can pretend like you don't. And sometimes we overlook things in ourselves just because we don't want to be bothered. We all have those moments. But it's going to show up. It's going to come back. It's not going to go away. Especially if it's something that you really feel like you need to fix and you got to address it and you're unwilling or unable. And sometimes we're just not capable at the moment. So you do have to give yourself some grace, especially when you're trying to persevere through a really, really tough environment, right? HR people, you got to give yourself some grace. CEOs, you got to give yourself some grace. Employees, you got to give yourself some grace. We all need to be afforded a little bit of grace, because times are insane. There is so much coming at everybody, so much information. This information age, man, there is so much information, and it takes time to discern what's real and what's not, what's true and what's not. There's so much coming, and it moves so fast. Perseverance takes a little bit of patience. It takes a lot of ownership. It takes a whole lot of grace. And it takes a willingness to be flexible and adaptable, right? Perseverance is not just about push. Keep moving, keep grinding, right? That's not all that perseverance is. Perseverance is a lot about grace, a lot about patience, right? All right. I'm so glad to be with y'all this morning. Any questions, comments? Jerry's been sitting here pumping me up today.
Beulah Davis says she's
morning,
screaming
Beulah.
over there. And
Good
she
morning,
said it
me
will
too.
show up. And everybody's just in agreement with what you're saying on today about perseverance, because you got to definitely have a village somebody to push you a little bit. I think a lot of times when we come in before the show, we're like, and then,
Yes.
and then. And so we try to get it in real quick before we get on the air to talk to other people, because you got to be motivated yourself to do what you do.
You do. And you got to be able to manage, or you got to be able to manage some of the stuff, right? So there are times I'm like, you know what? I am hot. But I have to decide who gets to see that and who doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of the closest people get to see that because they understand what's around that, right? They understand what it took to get to that.
Yeah.
So you just got to know you. You've got to know you. So I wish y'all lots of perseverance this week, this year. We all got to persevere. Go get registered. Check your mail-in ballot across the country. Check your mail-in ballot. They have changed rules in the states, you guys, and they are rejecting them in droves. Tens of thousands are being rejected, enough that can sway or swing an election. Check your mail-in ballot. Did you put all the information in the right place? Do you have the right mail-in ballot? Because they've changed some of them. Please, I'm begging you, if you do mail-in, please double check it, okay? Go get registered. If you can register day of, make sure you're doing that. Make sure you've got your registration card. Make sure you're checking your polling places. Show up. California, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Washington, show up today for your votes. Check out U.S. Vote Foundation, where every citizen is a voter. That's their mantra. So go out, make your voice heard, be active in the way that works for you, and make a difference. We can get through this. Love you guys. See you next week. Bye.